Here's more wrestling news for October 1st, 2022. And we're starting off this afternoon with Vince McMahon, who, as we all know, has had an interesting life from his time living in a trailer to being the unquestionable king of professional wrestling. McMahon worked for decades behind WWE's cameras, making sure the product was to his liking, but now he'll be the one under the spotlight. PW Insider has learned that Vice TV is filming a new documentary on McMahon and will cover a ton, even his retirement and resignation from earlier this year. On Twitter, Dave Meltzer confirmed that he has been interviewed for the documentary and will no doubt have plenty to say about the man he's covered for decades. PW Insider also noted that the documentary will air at some point this month, and we're sure it'll make for an interesting watch when it hits screens. In our most recent video, we reported that Roosh is officially All Elite, with Tony Khan confirming the news on Twitter. After appearing for AEW since Double or Nothing, Roosh is now officially part of the AEW roster, but isn't the only addition. It's also been confirmed by Tony Khan that Bandito is now All Elite, and was given an offer immediately after his match with Chris Jericho this week, in which he failed to dethrone the ROH World Champion. That's not all though, as PW Insider reports that AEW is also looking to sign Juice Robinson, saying there's massive interest in bringing him in following his match with AEW World Champion Jon Moxley. Robinson competed in a world title eliminator and would have had an AEW World Championship match if he'd won, but ultimately came up short against Jon Moxley. Robinson won't be challenging for the AEW World Championship, but the night wasn't a total waste for him, as it may just be a matter of time before he, too, is All Elite. During this week's NXT, Tony D'Angelo suffered an injury, one that resulted in his match with Wes Lee being called off. Lee was awarded the win after it was confirmed that D'Angelo couldn't compete, but we have some good news regarding his condition. The Wrestling Observer newsletter has learned that things aren't as bad as previously feared, and although he is expected to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, he won't require any surgery. It's never a good thing to get injured, but this seems to be the best of a bad situation, as the promising NXT superstar will be back relatively soon. In 2020, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows were released by WWE, with their final appearances being as part of the Undertaker vs. AJ Styles Boneyard match from WrestleMania 36. Since then, the Good Brothers have appeared for Impact Wrestling and have an agreement with New Japan, but they're not counting out a WWE return. Speaking to Sports Illustrated, Carl Anderson said that while he and Gallows have enjoyed what they're doing, a WWE return is possible. Just like you said, never say never. We've got verbally agreed upon dates with New Japan Pro Wrestling for an extended period of time, but there's such a built-in story with Bullet Club, and we never got to finish the story in WWE with AJ Styles or even Finn. There's been a lot of things that have happened in the business, so you can never say never. Anytime we can work with brothers like AJ and Finn, we're always going to listen to that. Anderson's comments are interesting, given that only yesterday we reported that WWE has something big lined up for Finn Balor, which could in theory include the Bullet Club alum. With so many superstars returning to WWE in recent months, perhaps the Good Brothers will be next, and a Bullet Club reunion in WWE could be sooner than anyone would expect. One name fans do get to see and hear from each week in WWE is Corey Graves, but his commentary this week didn't exactly thrill fans. On SmackDown, Graves called the action for the Bloodlines match against Madcap Moss and Ricochet and compared the dominant faction to the Targaryens. A nod to the infamous family from Game of Thrones and the prequel House of the Dragon was met with mockery by fans online, who found the line cringe-inducing. Some also pointed out the rather non-PG actions that the Targaryens have done, such as marrying their own siblings to keep their bloodline pure, something that thankfully no one in the bloodline is doing. WWE has never shied away from pop culture references, and Game of Thrones remains a huge part of pop culture for fans, but this is a line that audiences really wish had stayed on the drawing board. After a year away due to pregnancy, Lacey Evans returned to WWE TV this year and has had a rough time since then. Returning as a face on SmackDown, Evans was moved to Raw as a heel before being moved back to SmackDown as a heel, where she's not been picking up wins. In a recent match from SmackDown, Evans dominated Women's Champion Liv Morgan, but Liv got the win in the end, putting the Southern Belle through a table after for good measure. While speaking on his drive-thru, Jim Cornette trashed Evans' booking and speculated why things are going poorly. Who Who did Lacey Evans piss off? That's my question. Because I don't know that I've seen a more talented female performer booked in such a ridiculous, shitty ways ever from any company. What are you supposed to think about her? They had her do those promos. Again, part of this I'm sure was Vince, and some weird Vince idea that he had. They had her do the promos as the abused child, the military hero, and a determined young woman, which all led up to her being a heel for some reason. She's great as a heel, but now they're using her as fucking cannon fodder for this Liv Morgan experiment of trying to make people believe that Liv Morgan is, now, or ever has been, or should be, a professional wrestler. Evans was once considered a favorite of Vince McMahon and was in line for a run as Raw Women's Champion, but that was a long time ago, and these days the sassy Southern Belle is lucky to get any wins on WWE TV. In May, RK Bro lost the Raw Tag Team titles to the Usos in their Tag Gold Unification match, and it was reported not long after that Randy Orton was injured. Orton is said to be suffering from a back injury, one that he had been dealing with for a while before this announcement, and there's been a somber update on his condition. According to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, there's major concern over Randy Orton's injury, especially about the severity of what has happened. At one point, WWE had hoped for the Viper to be back in the ring by now, but that clearly isn't the case. At the time his injury was first covered, it was said that he could require surgery, but there's been no definitive answer as to whether he's gone under the knife, which if so, would add more time to his recovery. Now Orton is expected to miss the rest of the year and will likely miss a good chunk of 2023, leaving WWE to go on ahead without one of their biggest ever stars. For years, WWE has been embroiled in a lawsuit with Catherine Alexander, a tattoo artist who did some of the ink on Randy Orton. The lawsuit, first filed in 2018, alleges that WWE are improperly using Alexander's designs without proper reimbursement and are infringing on the copyright by using her designs in video games. After years of delays, thanks in part to the pandemic, the trial has finally taken place, and PW Insider reports that the jury found in Alexander's favor. The jury took 3 hours and 26 minutes to come to the decision in the U.S. District Court in the Southern District of Illinois. The jury was asked 3 questions. If the tattoos were fair use, they said no, and that when deciding the damages, they said Alexander was entitled to $3,750. The third decision made was whether Alexander was entitled to any profit from video games or content using the tattoos, and the jury ruled she was not. $3,750 may not be a fortune, but this could prove to be a landmark case and make WWE reevaluate their use of tattoos on talent in future games and projects. WWE had originally offered Alexander $450 for her ink, which she was quick to reject, but we'll have to see what the future holds for WWE's use of tattoos after this case. This week, Hurricane Ian ravaged Florida, a state that many wrestlers have decided to call home. AEW even let talent miss this week's AEW Dynamite if they weren't comfortable traveling through the storm, but one staffer has been seriously impacted. On GoFundMe, a donation page has been set up for AEW audio technician Dennis Bowe, who lost his family home during the storm. Power surges during the storm resulted in Bowe's house catching on fire twice, and when he returned home after being on the road with AEW, the house was completely destroyed. The fundraiser was originally seeking just $10,000 to help Bowe's family out, but has quickly surpassed it, following $10,000 in donations by Chris Jericho and Tony Khan. With the help of others including Adam Cole, Britt Baker, Nick Jackson, and many more, the account has raised over $28,000, and we're sending our best to Dennis and his family at this time. Dennis's story is tragic, but sadly he's not the only name in wrestling to have been seriously affected by the hurricane. On Twitter, WWE's Angelo Dawkins gave an update on his situation, saying that his home has been flooded with knee-deep water ruining the house. Despite this, Dawkins tried to be his usual positive self in the image tweeted, as he's one of the estimated 2.3 million in Florida without power. Hurricane Ian has devastated the Sunshine State and thankfully appears to be over, but for many, the long-term effects of the hurricane are only starting to be felt. Ever since the White Rabbit began showing up, it has been believed that this is the return of Bray Wyatt, who was in talks with WWE earlier this year. Wyatt feuded with many top stars before his abrupt 2021 release, including Seth Rollins, in perhaps both men's most infamous storyline. In 2019, Rollins' feud with The Fiend drew much controversy when their Hell in a Cell match ended via referee stoppage, with many fans incorrectly believing it was due to a DQ. Speaking to Ariel Helwani, Rollins recalled the feud and the difficulties he had. The Bray Wyatt character was just difficult. If you look at anybody that worked with the Bray Wyatt character for an extended period of time, they didn't come out of it better than they went in. It was very difficult to have a story with him where, aside from Randy, it was difficult for anyone. I think maybe Daniel Bryan might have escaped a little unscathed, but I mean, everyone else pretty much met a dire end for their character. I mean, that was the end for the Seth Rollins character as you knew it, the Beast Slayer character, you know? It was tough figuring out how to tell a good wrestling story with that character. I was not good at the phenomenology stuff. I wasn't able to interweave that with reality enough to make what I felt was a captivating story. It wasn't much long after that Rollins would turn heel, a role he's kept up with to this day, so although Wyatt may be back, Seth may be hesitant to step in the ring with him again. And we're ending with SmackDown, as WWE usually hosts a dark match after the taping, and this week was no exception. Following SmackDown, Intercontinental Champion Gunther retained his title against Shinsuke Nakamura, but post-match was on the receiving end of a Kinshasa to send the crowd home happy. Gunther's next title defense will be televised and take place on next week's SmackDown against Sheamus in what will no doubt be an excellent bout if their Clash at the Castle collision is anything to go by. Well guys, that's our news for today. Please share your comments below. Also hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to receive all notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.